everybody. Of course, Ronnie Doss here. And as you guys saw in the Facebook group, I said I'm very excited to be interviewing my great friend. This is a guy who has been just an incredible part of my life, an incredible friend, so much that a month from now we're going on vacation together, going to Costa Rica. Okay, that was
I think we might need to get a permission slip from your wife.
Yeah, so Costa Rica with our wives and some other great friends. But this is my friend Steve Murray, Maple Valley, Washington. Steve pastors a church. It's called Real Life Church, and it's the coolest church you can imagine. They do amazing things for the community. They have a garden on the premises of the church where they grow things and they share these things with the community in Maple, Washington. And they do so much, and the church is big, and so many people come and take part of what they're doing there. Steve and his sons are in ministry. His wife, Tina, are there. Daughter-in-law, Alyssa's there. I saw a picture with her there the other night, and it's just so healthy, and it's so awesome. And I get to speak there, and I'm speaking there in May.
Our congregation loves you, man.
Well, I love them. So it's cool. So listen, we're going to be together maybe half an hour. Who knows? It might go 3 or 4 hours. But I wanted to introduce you, Steve, and introduce you to the people that I know that are a part of what we do and our video subscription. And it's just really neat to have you here, man. So thanks for taking time. I know you have plenty to do, but thanks for taking the time.
I'm so honored to be here, and let's have some fun.
Yeah, man. So here, I want to do like 5 questions. That's kind of the way we'll go about this. So I'm going to throw 5 questions at you. I want you to be really honest about it. Of course, I know you would, but just be, raw in what you've seen, because I want to dig down. I don't want this to just be kind of a surface interview where yeah, this is what you need to do. Just to be honest. That's why I wanted you. This is the first one we've done, and I wanted you to be on here first. So
okay, so these people are going to keep it to themselves, right? They're not going to share these secrets all over the world, there. Right?
No, this will be just for our group. So
okay, good.
Group. So don't worry.
VIP group.
Yeah, this is it. Don't you worry a bit. They're awesome people. Good. Trust me. They put up with me. They like me. So, they're awesome. So right. Here's the first question. And this one is the first question, first interview for our group. This is one that I think is important to find out. But here's what the question says. It says, what are some of the most negative attributes that you have experienced when dealing with people that would call themselves leaders? So what are some of the negative attributes that you've experienced when you were dealing with people that were what we'd say, quote unquote, leaders? Sure. What are some of those, and why would you say that?
Well, something comes to my mind right away is the lack of approachability. There's so much that a leader has within them that people want to pull out of a leader, but oftentimes they can't approach that person. Either they're intimidating, or they posture themselves in a way where they're too good or too busy or just not approachable. Or even if there is time, it's an awkward intimidation or awkward feeling that somebody would actually want to take some time with this person. And so that lack of approachability is frustrating to me. I noticed that, like in the church world, sometimes it's almost like the guy at the top is just hard to get to or hard to have a conversation with. And if you have a conversation, it's kind of awkward, and it doesn't really seem to produce to the level of what you're hearing from maybe the pulpit or from the leadership meeting or from the seminar or whatever. So a lack of approachability is a huge one for me. I think another thing that just comes to my mind is guys that hover, micromanage, and just kind of like they want it perfect, and so they just kind of like ride your tail, and nitpick on the little details, or the lack of involvement. Because the opposite is true too, is that sometimes the leader just leaves it to the people to figure out what they're going to do, and then they feel kind of abandoned, or they feel kind of alone. And so I think that there's this balance that has to happen where you're not micromanaging, but you're also not like disconnecting and letting them figure this thing out. There's a time for that as well, but I think that you touch base with them, and it doesn't even have to be about the job that they're doing. You just touching base with them. How do you like being here? how's things going at home, that type of thing. And so you don't have to manage the project, but you do want to think about the details of the person's life, and be curious and be interested in that type of thing.
Yeah, one of the things with you that I have seen has been so impressive is that you are around and you're accessible. You have a huge church, 1,000 people are there in Maple Valley, Washington. And, the Pacific Northwest is not the place where churches are on every street corner and they're not all growing and thriving. There's different areas where there seems to be a tendency for that. But you built that out of, having such a healthy culture of making it about, I know you call it the orthopraxy, right? It's where you're out there and you're practicing what you're preaching. That's more important than the theology even that you stand on. Obviously, they're both important, but that's one of the things that's been most impressive for me seeing you. And you've built a really healthy team that have been there. And I know these guys, Ed and Brittany and Noel, I know all the way around, and incredible. And they're just so kind and honoring of each other. Genuinely, they're not just putting on a front or the face there. And to me, that kind of goes back to what you're talking about, approachability. And there's not a weirdness about being with someone who's there in leadership. And I think all of that, it crosses over, as we say. I've heard leadership terms in the corporate level, is that these things cascade down and to other people in the organization. And you guys have done that incredibly well, as I think, as anybody that I've seen. And you guys are masters at it, or at least appear to be masters at it. I know there's things that we've worked on before in staff trainings that we've done, but it's phenomenal. And go ahead.
Well, let me comment on that a little bit, because there's a lot of intentionality out of that, Ronnie, because there's a big difference between me building my organization and me building people. Mm-hmm. And one of the things that at our church I've noticed is that the people that are in our congregation and in our leadership team, they're a part of designing what our church looks like. Now, I have the overarching vision and things, but I let people contribute valuable pieces of what it looks like, because people tend to support that which they're a part of creating, and they tend to subconsciously break down the thing that was created for them. So in other words, if they're just employees, they're not going to protect the organization the same way that they're going to protect their organization. And so you got to give people some ownership, some creative license, some involvement in making big decisions, an opportunity for them to correct you if they think that you're going the wrong direction, and you can listen to them and hear their valuable input and then change course if need be. I don't think that we listen to our employees enough as leaders, because they know us better than some of our spouses know us, because they're with us more hours, 8 hours a day or longer. And they know our quirks, they know our weaknesses, they know the things that we tend to do that turn people off. We should listen to them and allow them to contribute into not only building the organization, but building us as leaders.
Wow. You said something that I was chewing on it after you said it, and I hope everybody that watches this gets it. You said that people, how did you say it? They build vision that they're a part of, and it's like they tear down anything that they're not a part of.
People tend to build and support that which they're part of creating. And they subconsciously begin to dismantle the things that was created for them, or given to them. And so if they're not a part of creating it, they won't protect it the same way. And so you can hey, we're going to do this. We're going to do this big initiative. We're going to go out there. This is our campaign. This is our marketing thing. And this is what you guys are going to do. And all this rah, 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 and all that. And they're like going, stupid idea. And but he's the boss, so we're going to do it. And so everybody gets on board. And when it looks like it's not going to work, they're going, I never wanted to do this in the first place, right? Yeah. But when it's their idea,
they're in. If
it's not working, they're going to make it work. Yeah. Right. And so anyway.
Yeah.
tend to support that which they are a part of creating.
Yeah. So what I hear is the conversation there, and we'll move on to the second question as it pertains to family. But what I hear is that obviously it's one of the things that I know, Steve, you've heard me mention many times before, is a big difference between compliance and commitment. And when you're a part of something, like you said, you're committed to finding a solution because you're a part of building it. When you're not a part of building it, it's built for you, it's something there, then you're just compliant. And not that compliance is bad. I mean, there's obviously compliance organizations, there's certain things, standards you have to meet, especially when it comes to health and workplace, and all that compliance. But at the same time, I think that what I'm hoping is people that are listening to this will hear that if you have a team and an organization, you want to implement ways for the team to be the one that are building these ideas and building these things out, where they're taking ownership and where they're excited about what they're doing versus we call it voluntolding. It's like you've been told voluntarily that you're going to do this. So it's not voluntolding. I mean, it's like you're voluntold, go do this. And I heard that today. I mean, a big corporation that I'm working with, I'll go speak for, one of the phrases was, well, I've been voluntold to do something, to coordinate something. I was like, yeah. But, and that happens, right? But what you're talking about is just making sure that people feel that they're a part of what's being built, because then they'll defend it. And that's very different, and even I would guess even with a family. And that's, so I want to jump into the second question, because I know that this one's a big one, an important one for you. You're such a great family guy. It was within a year that Jen and I flew out there, and we were at your son Cameron's wedding and marrying Alyssa, and we were out there, and it was awesome. You've got such a wonderful family. You and Tina do an amazing job. How long have you guys been married again?
39 years now.
39 years. So you did it. Way to go.
Yeah. We're doing it.
You're doing it. Still in it. There you go.
Hey, I've worked this long to train her. You're not going to stop her now.
Got her trained. No point in leaving now.
Exactly.
Anyway, it's stupid. She's amazing. Yeah. So here's the question. What qualities do you believe are the most important as it pertains to leading your family and your team really well? And explain that. So what qualities do you feel are the most important when it comes to leading your family and your team? And some obviously overlap. I mean, will be both. Those qualities work with everyone. But tell me what you've come up with. Like, where do you land with that?
Well, I think the problem that a lot of people make a mistake at is they don't apply the things that they learn at work or in business to home, and vice versa. So like at home, we really need to lead our families with vision. And that's how you lead your company. That's how you lead your business and your project or whatever it is that you're working on, is you lead with a clear vision, something, that paints a picture for people, because people move towards the most dominant picture that's in their mind. And same with a family. A lot of times the reason there's dysfunction in family is because there was never vision put out there. There's no vision for where we're going to go on vacation. There's no vision for our next house. There's no vision for the skate ramp in the backyard. There's no vision for
a tree swing. Huh? Tree swing in your backyard.
Gotta have it. Zip line, those types of things, right? Fire pit, whatever. I mean, those seem like silly things, but when a family has a vision to rally around, I remember there was a time when I was like going through some depression, and there was some issues going on in my world and the things that were going on around me, and some things I couldn't control. So I wanted something that I could control that would make me happy. I went out and I learned how to build a pizza oven in my backyard. And so as I'm creating this pizza oven, it created vision for the whole family. My wife got excited about, she's going to be cooking pizzas, and it seems like a little thing, right? But, my kids were excited. Man, we're going to have parties over here. We're going to have these pizza oven. We're going to be cranking out the pizzas, and we're going to, all this kind of stuff. So even though it's a little thing, it doesn't seem like much. It created some vision for the family, just like when you're planning to go to Costa Rica, it's creating vision. And so, but a lot of these, I've noticed this because, of course, I'm a guy and I'm a husband. And so I notice a lot of my friends, or maybe not my friends, but people I know that are husbands and stuff like that, they're not leading their families with vision, and they're just letting life happen. And so they're going to work, and then by the time the weekend comes, they're tired, and there's no plans for the weekend. There's nothing for the kids. There's nothing for the wife. there's just no vision.
Wow. So let me ask this then. So if somebody's listening and they're like, you know what, that sounds awesome. I need a fire pit in my backyard that I can do the pizza oven. But if they're hearing this going, you know what, we need my family, we need some vision, and need to be clear on that. Like, what would you say to somebody that comes to you and goes, yeah, my family, we're struggling with it. And we heard and we know that, obviously it makes sense that we need some vision. How do you sit down and establish that? What does that process look like? Is it just a family meeting? Is it, is it organic over time, or what would you tell somebody to do?
Well, okay. So I had this experience about a year ago with this family that I knew. Their teenage daughter attempted suicide, and it was like, it was devastated the family, of course. There was two other siblings, and it was a really difficult, challenging thing to go through. And when I talked to the gal who attempted to try to take her life, I said, you're going to be leaving. You were planning on leaving behind your family who loves you very much. And she said, well, my family doesn't love me. And I said, well, of course they love you. And she goes, well, can you give me any evidence of that? And I thought, wow, first of all, a teenager saying that.
Pretty good.
Sharp kid, right?
Yeah.
But when it came right down to it, there was nothing that the family was doing as a family unit, except for they had a list of chores that they had to do. That was very clear. There's a very clear picture of what the consequence would be if you didn't do the chores and if you didn't get certain grades and if you didn't come home on time and if you broke curfew and all these kinds of things were all very, very clear, very well laid out, but there was nothing that communicated vision for the life. So we go through this whole thing and the dad says, okay, we're going to have a family meeting. We're going to talk about planning a vacation. So he has the family meeting and he sits down with the whole family and says, okay, we're going camping. And he had already picked the place out. He found the trailer. He got the whole thing. He told them, and the kids go, we don't want to go camping. And so he never thought to ask them what they wanted to do, right? And so the whole thing kind of backfired on him because he did the what did you call it?
Voluntolding.
Yeah,
he voluntold the family.
Right? So it didn't work out well. So again, what people are part of, they tend to support what they part of crave. So one of the things that we did is when our kids were younger, they loved doing inline skating. They loved to rollerblade. They loved to go to skate parks and stuff like that. I said, hey, we're going to go on a road trip and we're going to go down to California. But this is going to be a little bit different than other ones, right? I want you guys to decide what we're going to do along the way. And they all said, we want to go skating. We want to skate. I go, so what's it look like? They go, well, there's all these cool skate parks all the way down the Oregon coast and down the I-5 corridor. They're just amazing. I said, okay, pick 10 spots you want to stop at, and we'll stop at all 10 of them. And we did. And it was awesome. We had a great time. My wife and I had a ball. And, they would be skating and we'd sit out there, read books or whatever we did and talked and had a good time. And we had a most amazing, the kids still talk about that. When you involve the family in the vision, not just dictate the vision,
right?
It seems a lot better.
Wow. Yeah, that's awesome, man. And that the fact that you guys have done what you've done so well, and then just realizing with some family, this is a great thing to notice. I guess it would be to have a young person say, can you gather any evidence or show me evidence of that?
Exactly.
I love it. That's what you're up against. You're not up against, but what we are dealing with is a younger people that are sharper, more exposed to things, more language. They're learning different levels of self-awareness on many levels, I think many ways. Show me the evidence. And so that would be something that's a great takeaway for you guys that are watching this. Me picking Steve's brain and asking him questions. These are gold because his life experience and being a ministry leader and the over the years that he has, how many years of church? 21 now almost?
The church's been going 21 years. Yeah.
Yeah, 21. And with that, so many life experiences. But people want to gather evidence. People are looking for evidence. They're looking for evidence. If you're a business owner, you have a team, you're in sales, whatever you're doing, people are always looking for evidence. And typically what I tell people is what people look for, they find in most cases. And so maybe this young lady is looking for evidence that she's not loved. So she couldn't find any evidence that she was loved. And so what we look for, we find, and people look for that you're not offering a above standard product or a service or, these kind of things. People are trying to find evidence. And I guess the question would be is what are we offering people? What are you giving people in your family, your kids? Are they part of it? Or do you carry that old iron fist of this is the way we're going to do it, and then that's it, and there's no buy-in, and the next thing you know, there's fragments between the family and no communication in a sense, if it's not maybe harsh communication. But even with teams and sales and companies, it's like you've got to communicate well, and you've got to be bought into this bigger picture, and you need to make sure that you've talked about how this applies to you and where you're at and what you're going to benefit out of it, but also what you're going to exchange and what you're going to give, and be aligned to something. Because when you aren't aligned to it, it's like you aren't aligned to some sort of a vision, and you get hit with the challenges. I just did a team session yesterday, Steve, you'll like it. I said there's 3 kinds of challenges in life. There's the unexpected challenge, the one that you had no idea was going to happen. Then there's the expected challenge, and this is the one that you could guess could maybe show up. These are challenges with building your business, company, expanding your house, sending a kid to college. There's health challenges. Those could be expected, and then there's the challenges that you create yourself. And that was my 3rd level. And that's where neglect, that's a big thing that fuels a lot of times the things that are the problems we create ourselves. And so being aligned to something is big. So you guys hearing that, I hope that you are anchoring down on that. It's very, very important to have a vision for your family and for your life, and to talk about it and have everybody's input on it. And there's times where I know Steve and Tina didn't want to go skating, but they sat there and let that happen because that was making a deposit into the lives of their kids. You can't always be making withdrawals and expect, can't be making withdrawals and expect there always to be money there. You run out.
Hey, when they're gone, right?
Yep.
And
I saw something the other day. I saw this the other day, that by the time a kid is 18 years old, they've spent 80% of the time that they'll spend with you in their life.
Oh, wow.
As a parent, something to think about. It's like 80% at 18, because 19, 20, old, college, on out. But yeah, man, it goes fast. So
going back to that story about the gal when she said, can you show me some evidence of that? What the response from the father was he read it as disrespect.
Oh.
So she's given him some super great feedback that he could have turned everything around, and he read it as disrespect. And I think sometimes as leaders, we do that. Sometimes our team are giving us some feedback and they're pissy about it, or they're immature about it, or, they come off with an attitude that is inappropriate. And we have to disconnect from that long enough to hear, is there something being said here I need to listen to? And our kids are that way. Our kids can sometimes say things that are disrespectful or out of line, but there's some truth in them.
Yeah.
And you really have to be able to have an ear for that.
Yeah, the feedback part of it, we could talk more and more on that, but we won't. But guys, if you're listening to this and you have a family, spouse, this is you're a part of me doing this VIP and this mentoring group that we have. I know that you've given me space to be a voice in your life. What we're talking about right now is being open to feedback. And sometimes what I tell people, and we'll do this before we move on, because that might be the thing you draw from this call, is sometimes you need to ask for feedback and then just shut up. Ask for it and then shut up. Just whatever's said, be careful of the fact, meaning, scenario. Many of you have heard me talk about that. Be careful of the label you put on it. This guy put disrespect on it. That may not have at all been what it meant. I mean, I understand that it come across that way, but you want to be looking beyond that and be willing to take feedback without taking it so personal. It's the quote, always give your personal best, but never take things personal. Feedback is a tool. It's a weapon that you can use to destroy mediocrity in your marriage and your relationships in your life. So yeah, that's brilliant, Steve. Love it, man. That's great. So in next question, throughout your career, like highs and lows, ministry, career, business, knowing the people that you've known, just, doing life, right? Like we all do it, even regardless of the role we play. There's been some ups and downs, right? So the question is, the low points of your personal and your professional career, how have they benefited you?
It's kind of interesting when you look back at all of the greatest things that have happened to you in your life. If you look right before that, there usually was a setback right before that. Because some of the decisions you make, the choices you make, me starting the church, was right after a major setback, right? And so sometimes our setbacks are the very things that cause us to reflect. And so, when things don't go well, that's actually really good, because it makes you.
Some people are going to hear this and be like, "What?
What?" Yeah, and even in the world that I'm in with church and faith and all that, people will come to me and they says, I'm having a faith crisis. I think I'm going to give up on my faith, and I go, oh, it's about time. And they look at me like, what? You can't say that. You're a pastor. It's like, no, it's about time. Until you get to this place where you dismantle your own narrative and really look at it really deep and say, why am I here? What's going on here? And why am I having these doubts and all these? Because this is where discovery comes in. And so when we have crashes or failures or seasons of darkness, or things aren't working, or whatever the case may be, the relationship's gone bad, or kids are acting up at home, or they ran away from home, or whatever the case may be, you get some troubling news from school or whatever, it causes you to reevaluate some things, your parenting, your marriage, or whatever. And you end up going to counseling, or you end up reading a book, or you end up getting with some other people and getting some advice, and it triggers something to make the adjustments you need to make in order to keep on growing and enhancing and living really, really well. So my feeling is that, well, can I give you an example? Or you got time for an example?
Yeah, I love it.
Okay, so when, we've been going for 14 years, and we tried everything to try to get a building to meet in, to have our offices and all these kinds of things. We could not find anything. We bought property, we had contracts with building, and things fell through, and we were going to merge with a camp, and we were going to use the camp, and they were going to use the church, and we were going to do all this stuff, and none of it worked. And after a series of disappointments, I find this piece of property that has a camp on it, on a lake, with big enough to have our church and to have our offices and all this kind of stuff, and then have the revenue of the camp and the camp experiences, and have groups come in and all these kinds of things. I'm really excited about it. And it's on this beautiful, beautiful lake, 5 minutes from the city town, area, and the town center. And I'm like so excited about doing this, right? Our leadership team was excited. Our congregation was excited. People were giving money. We did work projects, all this kind of stuff. But we had it in feasibility. And the entire time, my wife and my son kept telling me they didn't feel good about it. I was like, oh, you guys are really missing it. I was so mad at them. And they were like, birds pecking at me constantly, trying to get me to change my mind on this thing. But man, this thing is amazing. I mean, we're talking 45 acres on a lake for $3 million. And this is a score with buildings and space and all this. I was so excited. And so about 2 days before we had to make good on the whole thing, we found a problem with water that was going to cost over $1 million to fix. And it was like, that was enough for our board to say, no, we're not going any further. My son was so happy. He tried to pretend like he wasn't, My wife was so happy. She tried to console me. And I said, get out of my face. I mean,
Woman, move.
just be thou removed, right?
Right.
Be cast into the sea. Get out of here. So I was so frustrated and so angry. And I just sat in my chair one day, and my wife was asked. This is just like the day after I found out the news, and we canceled the contract. The people were mad at us. We almost lost our $100,000 earnest money, but we didn't. All this work, all this humility I felt was coming back on me. This is what we're doing. This is our plan. This is the big vision. I did 80 tours of this property and raised money, all kinds of stuff. And so it didn't work. And I learned something from that. Well, first of all, my wife says, how long are you going to be depressed? Because I'm not a depressed person. I don't get depressed very easy. And I said, well, I'm going to be depressed for 3 days. So don't talk to me. So I stayed depressed for 3 days. And on the third day, she talked to me. She goes, are you done being depressed yet? I said, yes. And so we started talking about it. And she said, well, what have you learned? And I said, well, I learned it doesn't have to work for it to work.
Hmm.
And what do you mean? I said, well,
wait. It doesn't have to work for it to work.
Yeah.
Say that. So, that's brilliant.
This was the thing. And that was something that he kind of evolved over the next month. And it's something that I share with people all the time. Just because an idea or a vision didn't work doesn't mean it didn't work, because it could have worked on you. It could have built you, right? In the Old Testament, there's a story of Moses taking people out of Egypt to the Promised Land, and the thing is, Moses was the one who led them, and he didn't make it into that Promised Land. He died. He died in the wilderness. Mm-hmm. But it doesn't have to work for it to work, right?
So, like you mean as you do something, the overall may fail, the concept of what the win would have looked like.
Something greater happens.
But something better is born out of it, birthed out of it, or the process of your becoming is better, is grown from it.
Yeah, it doesn't have to work for it to work on you. I mean, so it built my capacity. It opened up my leadership skills. It helped me. I rallied people. We had this feasibility experience that was amazing. But here's the other thing that happened. Because we were doing this, it got the attention of some of the local pastors. And when it fell through, one of the local pastors called me up and said, hey, can we talk? And I said, sure. And we had lunch, and he says, my church is dwindling in numbers. We have a debt-free building. It's worth about $6 million. And I want to retire. Maybe we should merge our churches together. You can have the building, and then you'll have a building, and then we will have the people and the resources we need in order to maintain this building, and I can retire. And so we came up with a plan. In 30 days. We had made a plan. Another 30 days, we were in the building, and we went from having to spend $3.4 million to getting a $6 million building for free.
Wow.
Plus, we gained another 100 people, and we were able to help a guy that was in a really bad situation, and a congregation that was in a bad situation, and everybody won, right? And so it didn't have to work for it to work. So even though it failed in a sense, the outcome was amazing.
Yeah. Wow, man. That's so good. There's a question, and I'll just throw it out there. It's one that I've looked at in reading a book. One of the phrases in there was, what's your favorite failure? And so it sounds like that could That's be one like looking back going, that was one that it stung the most, but we got the most out of it. And so regardless, and I've heard many stories of that in business also, trying to acquire another business and merge a company. And it's the same thing, with ministry. Guys need to know this. I mean, it's business. It's a business of helping people, and there's bills to pay. They have to, in ministry, all the logistics and so forth. There's work that has to be done, and there's challenges there that are different in many ways than corporate challenges for for-profit organizations. But dealing with those setbacks and learning from it, it's profound. If you could take your fourth question, and we'll do one more really quickly. If you could take yourself back to the very beginning, let's say 21 years ago, you started the church, but if you could go back to there and have a conversation with you back then, or even earlier than that, Steve, like if you go back to some point where a lot of things were beginning for you, marriage, relationships, a big move, anything like that, what would you tell you?
Well, one thing I would say is don't take yourself too seriously. Uh, Realize that everything is an experiment. It's okay if stuff doesn't work. You know, you do your best to make sure that it does. But when it doesn't, don't get down on yourself. Just keep going. It's an experiment. Life is an experiment. We're trying new things all the time. When they don't work, it's another thing that you know doesn't work. So it's okay. But I think the biggest thing I would say to myself, because of the path that I've chosen, running an organization, I would say when I lose my key guy or a key employee or a key leader, to not worry. It's going to be okay. Even if I lose 5 or 10 of them all at once, it's going to be okay, because when a big tree falls, a small tree emerges, right? And so they're just waiting for their chance, and that's what happens in a forest. When a big tree comes, there's trees that have lied dormant for years that are maybe 4 feet tall that won't grow because they're not getting enough light. They're not getting the opportunity to grow. They're not getting the sun because the big tree is taking all of the focus or all of the light. And when it falls, the sun shines down to that little emerging tree, and it takes off and grows like 3 feet a year for a number of years. And that's what's going to happen to people on your team. When you lose a big tree, don't worry, the emerging trees are going to pop up all over the place. And not just one, but multiple. And that's happened to me time and time again. I've put my head in my hands a couple of times and go, what am I going to do now? And it's like, that's when the solution, the person shows up. They don't show up until that happens. So
wow. Yeah, it's so good, man. So, and there's people, you know, that I work with that are either part of this that will be getting this video, that have teams and businesses and, you know, have lost people, and it's, you know, part of the process.
Clients.
Do what?
Right? Customers.
Yeah, clients,
contracts.
people. Yeah, absolutely. And it's like, you know, one moves away, and then there's more sunlight for the other ones that can grow, and it's obviously even seasonal. And so I guess we could say that to people listening is, you know, everything's a season. We walk into some seasons, we're walking out of some seasons, but when it's been a tough one, we're more equipped for, you know, the next one. And if you stay at it, I mean, now obviously, Steve, and what you guys do, 21 years, phenomenal. And your growth and how healthy the church is and how the people are is phenomenal. That's why I love being there. So last thing, this is kind of neat. I think this is a neat idea. If you have your life message and it's posted on a billboard all over the world, like you got these billboards, you put them up, it's got the Steve Murray life message. It's a phrase, it's a word. What would it be that you would put on those, Steve?
I would say my life message is go beyond yourself. Make sure your business goes beyond yourself. Make sure it has a cause beyond the financial benefits. Make sure that it has a cause beyond your ego. Make sure it has a cause behind you feeling like you have to prove something to your dad who ignored you. Make sure that your cause goes beyond you and not just filling some kind of deficit or some kind of dream that you have, but make sure that you go beyond yourself. And if I was going to put something on a billboard, though, Ronnie, I think here's what I would say. I would say something like this: ask yourself who's going to be at your deathbed, and then go invest in those people.
Go invest in those people.
Yeah, invest in the people that are going to be at your deathbed. Invest in others too, but just remember, sometimes the people that are going to be at your deathbed don't get much investment because we're so busy building something. So make sure that you take the time to invest in the people that will be holding your hands at the end of life.
Wow.
Like Addison.
Dude.
And Andy.
Oh, man. That's good. And
Steve Murray.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Dude, that's incredible. That's so good. It's so rich, man. These are just little small glimpses into the thing that I call the Steve Murray, because that's what you are, man. You are an incredible voice in my life and an inspiration. I love our conversations. I love your support and encouragement for me and for Jen and the girls. And when I go to Seattle, I stay at your house. I don't.
We look forward to it.
I do. I love being there and how you welcome me. But your wisdom and your insight and your mentors. You've had great mentors. I mean, maybe on another time we'll talk about them. Some of the things that you've learned from your mentors over the years, because you've had some powerhouse mentors in the corporate world, business world, leadership world, ministry world. Maybe we'll talk about those sometimes, because I want people to understand and get to know you more and more, because it's been absolutely a privilege walking through life with you as a friend and by our side. So thank you for doing tonight, man. I know that everybody.
Hey, Ronnie, I appreciate you and how you've poured into our life and into our congregation. And seriously, you've helped us move forward in so many different ways, not just with, the concepts that you share with us, but also just the personal investment that you've made into us personally. And I feel like you do that with your videos as well. You really care about the people that you're talking to. This isn't just a business you're building. You really do care, and you do go beyond yourself. So I appreciate you. And I look forward to, I'd love to do something like this again. There's all kinds of things going through my mind right now that I'd love to talk about. Some stuff that would really help people that are like feeling like they're in the pit right now.
Yeah.
That help lift them up. Ronnie, as we go, just here's a thought. One thing I think that people don't allow themselves to do is be depressed for 3 days. When stuff happens, sometimes you have to grieve the loss of it,
Mm-hmm.
And so to give yourself permission to grieve that loss and to sit and process it instead of just running off to the next thing. Like some of us are going to do with this video. We're just going to run off to the next thing and really maybe sit down and contemplate it a little bit and give yourself the luxury to grieve a little bit and contemplate those types of things. And your videos make me do just that. They don't make me depressed. They just make me think.
Yeah. And, well, it's the quote I heard the other day: everybody thinks, very few pay attention. And I think hopefully these, your insights can give people some better ways to pay attention to what's going on with their team and with themselves. And the mourning the loss of something is so important, not just kind of trying to get through it, but looking at what you're going to get from it and allow yourself to feel loss if it's a loss. But then get back up and go back at it, having the lessons and having people around you like you to encourage, and you've got to have that. And so that's what we want this network of people to be. This is our membership base that we're starting to build, and these are the kind of things that people are going to be able to get from us. And I know that we're excited about pouring into them. So you and I'll talk again about doing another one of these really soon, and we'll jump deeper into some other ideas. But thank you so much for your time today, Bud. And guys, thanks for being on that are watching this. We love and appreciate you. So if you need us, email us, info@dossteam.com. And we appreciate you guys. Go out and have a great rest of the day, rest of the week, and we'll see you again soon.